one of the problems with having people who speak their mind in the game, people like you, Milas speaks his mind about what he thinks about Sri Lankan cricket. Everybody expects cricketers to have a point of view, and then they get attacked, they get criticized. We're seeing that with young Irfan Pathan. I say young because we're at the stage where everybody's young now. We're seeing that with him now, speaking his mind out. Do you see cricketers as purveyors of a skill? Or do you see them at a different place in society that they should have an opinion that should influence society?
Well, I think it's a bit strange to have, sportsmen and women become, how would you say, idols and role models. At the end of the day, we're entertainers. But in the modern day, there is a certain expectation from sport. It is always, not just in the modern day, I think all throughout time, sport is supposed to be the embodiment of both a healthy mind and a healthy body, of discipline, of integrity, of doing the right thing at whatever cost, of having a certain spirit of sportsmanship and a sense of fair play. Now, everyone's not perfect. Every human being has faults, has experiences that are quite different. But when you are part of a sport, especially like cricket, and when the term, it is not cricket, is used to convey a sense of fair play and a sense of right and wrong, there is a burden and a responsibility upon all modern cricketers and any cricketer who plays at any level to adhere to those principles of the spirit of cricket, of fair play, of leading a very positive lifestyle on and off the field, and thereby becoming an example for others to follow up sport and also kind of influence others' characters to be better.
It's interesting you say that, Sangha, but not everyone has had the education, not everyone has the outlook. So everybody's asked, what do you think of Black Lives Matter? Not everyone has studied the history to understand what Black Lives Matter means. And to be a great player, you don't need to have understood the history. So is that a burden then?
Absolutely, Harsha. But there's an innate and inbuilt sense of decency and fairness that we all have. Whether we're educated or not doesn't matter. I've seen some of the worst activities or worst, acts committed by people with the best education. But if your education is not based on values, and if your education is not, rooted in that inbuilt moral compass, that where you know what is right and wrong, then you're in trouble. Education is not going to take any of those prejudices away. It's just going to allow you to argue them away better. And I think for a lot of the cricketers around today to wake up to what reality is and their roles in portraying a positive message to society is very important. The other thing is, you also have to understand as an entertainer, you are responsible, to the spectators and the fans for providing you with a stage and an audience in front of which to perform or on which to perform. Without them, you are nothing. And it is very important to understand that along with that comes social responsibility. The benefits that we get to be shared out, the benefits that we get for us to do something off the field that benefits someone else. It doesn't have to be on social media, it doesn't have to be on TV, it doesn't have to be public. But the responsibility you can't escape. And I think for all cricketers, we always have this. If you've seen it, we always have cricket teams or sports teams around the world doing charity. Some of it looks very staged because sometimes you feel that you have to, have it out there in social media, in front of the cameras, people to know what you're doing. But actually, there's no need for that. If you're a responsible citizen, whether you play sport or not, you have a responsibility to make another life better. Do it in your own way.
Yeah. Is that what took you back to Lahore? Because I would have thought it would have scarred you. I would have thought what happened on that tour would have scarred you for life. And yet you felt the need to go back to Lahore.
Yeah, I think it was important that I went. And I wouldn't say it was just because I only had the highest purpose of doing something great for cricket, but also from a personal perspective and from an emotional coming to terms of what happened in 2009. It was really important I go back and I got closer. It was almost like coming full circle. And I had the opportunity to do that, but also send out a very powerful and positive message for trying to get cricket back into Pakistan. And sometimes, Harsha, again, like I say, you know what the right thing is and you do it. There might be consequences along the way. And it's the same in Sri Lanka. You speak your mind, and the more you speak your mind, the more open you are to criticism and to certain vindictive individuals trying to, further a personal agenda against you or against those affiliated with you or teammates or part of a group that really speaks out. And, I've experienced that in the last 3 weeks. Mahela has, and a few of the others have. But it doesn't mean you have to stay quiet or take a backward step, nor does it put any burden on you to speak out anymore or speak out at all. Everyone's got to be able to do their own thing, live their own life in freedom without fear. And like you said, sometimes we feel pressure to say things or to have an opinion on everything, and you really don't need to feel pressured. I mean, if you didn't look at Twitter or social media, where is that pressure to say or do something? If you didn't have a television camera with a mic stuck into your face saying, oh, what do you think of this? Do you really have a burden to say something? If you have something to say and you believe it is important and of value, then say something. If it's not, it's best to keep quiet.
Well, the whole Black Lives Matter, which focused on racism, on how black people were denied rights. As an Asian, is as different from blacks. Have you ever experienced something that says, look, did someone tell you you're Asian? Did you ever get the impression as you were traveling around, I'm Asian? I may not be black, but I'm Asian, and people are reminding me of that. And is that the next stage?
Well, I think everyone experiences various forms of racism and discrimination. Some historically, some in a certain context. Sometimes skin color is not the only basis for discrimination. But if you take Black Lives Matter, or if you take racism and discrimination in the world, I think one of the most important things to do is to teach our children history as it should be taught. Not to teach them a version of history that is sanitized, or the profile of someone who is considered to be great in a disinfected and sanitized manner so that you only see the positives or see someone in a positive light. I think it is important to shine the spotlight on every single person that we read about or talk about, that we consider inspirations, that we consider great in terms of history. We need to shine a spotlight on on the whole character, the good, the bad, the ugly. Once you understand what history and real history is, I think you will find a lot of attitudes changing. If you wake people up to that reality, instead of believing that we are the be-all and end-all of civilization, I think that is going to be a very, very powerful lesson to everyone. And Harsha, we are all taught to love our country, to respect our history and our traditions. Sometimes we follow that blindly, and that also stops us from appreciating other cultures, other countries, other people, other races, ethnicities, all of them, other religions. So educate yourself, open your mind, but more importantly, open your eyes, because without that, change will not happen, and change is not going to be overnight. It's not going to be a flavor of the month where you protest for a month and forget about it. It's a slow, tedious process that involves everyone in the world, not just one country, but everyone, all of us. And it is very important that we have these unbiased, realistic, and stark, and sometimes scary change, being a part of how we raise our kids. We have to make them better. If we are not good enough, we have to make our children better. If we have not done our part, we have to ensure our children do their part. So we have to change as people, as individuals, and we have to ensure that our children grow up in the right environment, with the right mindset, and with open arms, open hearts, and open minds.
As someone who's a very proud Sri Lankan, I'm going to that side. You're very proud. We heard that in the speech you delivered in 2011. You're very impassioned when you speak about Sri Lanka. You played in an era. There's some pillars in that Sri Lankan side. There's you, there's Maila, there's Sana Jayasuriya Murali. The support cast around them is a Dilshan, a Samar of Veera, a Herat, dare I say a Vas. There's 8 or 9 like that. Does it pain you now to see that Sri Lankan cricket is not what it could be. And especially we see Kushal Mendes, Kushal Pereira, Avishka Fernando. We see these boys and say, wow, they're special, but they're not becoming who they can be. Does it pain you a little bit?
Yeah, it does pain me a little bit, but it also encourages me that we're still producing cricketers like that, who have the potential and again the talent to become great. But what we're not providing them with is the structure and the guidance to become great. And I think that's been a failure of the Sri Lankan system for a long period of time. We've always been left behind, harking back to a system of first-class cricket, excusing it, and without realistically looking at it for what it is by saying, oh, we want a World Cup with that. But the real thing is, other countries have more than one, and they've over time really refined and changed their structures. India's done the same thing, from having an inordinate amount of teams. You've structured it down to having the best player against the best. You've made the game extremely professional, made it a commitment and a career so that people can concentrate on getting better and playing the game at first class level, so they graduate as accomplished cricketers into the international level. In Sri Lanka, we always have this saying that in the first 2 years of a Sri Lankan cricketer's international career, still teaching them how to play first class cricket. And I think that holds true even more today than it did in the past. And unless we fix our first class system, refine it, and we provide these players with the best possible nurturing grounds to become great, and we take away all the excuses that these cricketers can have as to why they can't improve and get better, we are failing those cricketers. And it is very unfair, in my view, to point fingers at the young cricketers of today and not point fingers at a system that has failed them. And I think if we structure that properly, Harsha, you will see Kusal Mendes in the 10,000 club. You'll see Avishka Fernando in the 10,000 club, and you'll see Sri Lanka become a winning side.
You know, there's another thing that hurts me about Sri Lanka. On my first trip to Sri Lanka, I was there in '93. I saw the old school Sri Lankan player. You know, you go to Ranjit Fernando's house, there's Leo Vijayasinghe, there's Michael Tissera, Anura Tenekul. There's a certain breeding, a certain class about these gentlemen. And so when I first heard that anti-corruption was setting up an office in Sri Lanka, I said, Sri Lanka, because let's move on to another generation. I said, if you tell me Mahila Jayawardena, Kumar Sangakkara, Muttiah Muralidharan, I said, if you tell me that these three people require an anti-corruption unit, I'll stop what I'm doing. And yet, it affected me initially, because to me, Sri Lanka is this country of beautiful romantic cricketers, and that's changed. Why is that happening? And surely that must hurt a lot of people.
Well, I think corruption's always been part and parcel of this game, unfortunately. We had it happen in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. And then it went from match fixing to spot fixing. And then when you have suddenly a game of cricket in a country that is devoid of the old stalwarts, the people who can really, impart experience and knowledge, and self-respect and respect for the game and its culture and its rules and its traditions into a young side, then that side becomes vulnerable. And over the years, if you take the dressing room of the Sri Lankan sides today and the first class structures, you don't have any of the old greats there to give off their wisdom, to give off their experience, to make cricketers understand what their responsibilities are and how.
Not at the clubs. Sorry, not at the clubs. When you were a kid at the club, there were people around you.
Yes, but not anymore. Now, if you really go to the clubs, the most experienced players are all leaving to Australia and England, because playing for a club is not a professional exercise anymore. So if you want to earn a living, you go abroad. So all these young children, young kids come into club dressing rooms that are devoid of experience, devoid of that decency in terms of culture.
Corruption is so unlike Sri Lanka.
It is, but it definitely depends on who you speak to. But the bottom line is, when you have a vulnerable dressing room, when you have a vulnerable first-class cricketing structure, then it's open season for any of these corruptors to come in and try and get their hooks through into the cricketers. And they use coaches, they can use selectors, they can use
groundsmen sometimes.
Groundsmen, whoever you want. But the ever-present danger of corruption is there for every country. And if you see the evolution of corruption from having started, way back with cricket, in the West, and it travels to the East, and you have all these informal betting circles and bookmakers, and you have vast amounts of money in terms of TV rights, in terms of TV revenue and television, now taking the game to every household. Corruption, unfortunately, will rear its ugly head from time to time. The real important thing is to empower players to say no, to provide them with the right awareness and education programs, and again, the nurturing grounds really count, that they are corruption free, and it extends to really vetting the administrators as well. And in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, cricket and politics always has this unhealthy and corruptive influence, when it comes to each other. And I think politics being completely taken out of cricket is. Are you
disappointed? Are you disappointed at having to prove that the 2011 final was clean?
Yeah, it's disappointing and also a bit amusing at times. And we had that recently when the ex-sports minister made quite a frivolous claim. And we had to go in and answer questions and give our statements on it, quite a few from the team. But you also understand that when an individual is politically and morally corrupt, they kind of view the world and other individuals in relation to themselves, and they sometimes project their own insecurities onto others.
But actually to go through answering those questions and making the statement was I think really healthy for the game. Whether it was me or whether it was a selector, whether it was Mahela, whether it was anyone else. I think that process is really important for people to understand what respect for the game means, what playing the game in its best spirit and the right way means, and the fact that people of integrity are exactly what you need in cricket. People who stand up, aren't afraid to speak their minds, and also when you have any questions to be answered, you don't need to hide. You can go and answer any of those questions in any forum. And like I said, when it comes to politics and you have politically and morally corrupt individuals who are affiliated with sport, even in an official capacity, as we have seen with this particular individual, you understand where all of this comes from. And you don't have to be really afraid or really second guess yourself as to what their motivations are. You just have to face that, and you answer whatever questions, and where you're coming from, where your basis is, and that's more than enough, not to prove anyone else wrong, but to actually make a statement of fact that you are very secure in who you are.
So now that you're an influential voice, the numbers are past tense, the numbers are there, they're pillars, they're monuments, you can't take them away. What are your thoughts, especially now that COVID is affecting our game so much? The future of Test match cricket, the fact that umpires are being challenged through DRS. We just had 22 referrals in a Test match. Where do you see this game going?
It's hard to predict, Harsha. And
what about Test cricket itself?
Well, again, time will tell. It's great to have these rare occurrences of Test cricket now, isn't it? We've had no cricket, and suddenly Test cricket is all the rage. And it's been brilliant to watch that tussle. I mean, England and West Indies proved to be such an inspirational side, especially in the context of Black Lives Matter and the calls for social change around the world. But at the same time, we have to be realistic that this is still a sport that needs to be economically viable and financially stable. And that's going to take a lot of work going forward for Test cricket. And maybe this is a good lesson. Maybe less of it will actually be its saving. But, time will tell. I mean, we've been struggling to find this balance and find the right solution for the last few years. And the questions will still come. T20 will come back again. People will fall in love all over again with T20 or T10 or the 100 or whatever it is going to be. But for me, it is simply the fact that cricket needs to be enjoyed by everyone. It is not just for the Test match purist or the T20 fanatic. It is for everyone. And everyone needs to be able to choose a format that they love and follow it and enjoy it. And we as players, our responsibility is whatever format we play to the best of our abilities and entertain the public and not just think about yourself as a cricketer. It has to be entertainment. It has to be is played in fantastic spirit. It's got to be inspiring. And we've all got to change our attitudes, mindsets, and the games and the style of play to suit that.
You know, while researching this, I came across a very interesting anecdote of a 17-year-old Sangakkara sitting in one of the change rooms at the Nondescripts Cricket Club. What a name. I've asked so many people about it. I've heard names like challengers, warriors, fighters. I've never heard a club calling itself Nondescript.
Well, it is an anomaly even in Sri Lanka. You know, and you have the Sinhalese Sports Club, then you have the Burger Recreation Club, you have the Moore Sports Club, you have the Tamil Union, then you have the Colombo Coals or the Colombo Cricket Club. You know, there were the days when the names of the clubs, you know, had connotations far beyond just playing cricket. And I think the Nondescript Cricket Club stood out and well apart from the rest by saying all are welcome. We don't care who you are. We care about cricket. We don't care about your school, your background, your ethnicity, your religion. No issues. You want to play cricket? We accept everyone. You know.
I can relate to that. I mean, till the mid 40s or the early 40s, we had cricket tournaments played in India on religious lines. We had the pentangulars with the Muslims playing, the Hindus in background, so I can understand that. But my story is about you, 17-year-old, and someone asking you, what do you see yourself being? And you said playing test cricket for Sri Lanka, and they were your friends, so it was okay for them to laugh. What I want to ask you is, if someone is not seen to be this wow player at a very young stage in life, what does he need to do to become good enough to be a test match player?
That's a very tough question to answer, Harsha. You know, for me, I wasn't a wow player when I was playing for school cricket. When I was playing school cricket, Mahela was a wow player. Tilan Samravira was a wow player. Avish Gunavardhan, all of them. You know, you watch them play at 17 for school, you know they're going to play for Sri Lanka. I was quite different. I started cricket late. I started maturing late. So when I joined the NCC and I was in and out of the first class side, and I was in that dressing room, you know, with other contemporary players who were far better cricketers than I was. And I made that statement. It was very fair for a lot of them to say, well, that's not going to happen. And a lot of things went my way that were beyond my control. One was that Sri Lanka, being the reigning champions, got absolutely annihilated in the 1999 World Cup. We didn't even make it past the first round. And that called for huge changes in the system and in playing 11. So suddenly there was a huge focus on youth. During that time, it coincided with a really good run of form with the bat for me in under-23 tournament and in first class. Not so much in first class, but in under-23 tournament. And that got me pushed into the A side. I went to South Africa, had an okay 4-day tournament, had a very good 1-day tournament. And also, when I came back, I was put into the A side to play against Zimbabwe, and I managed to score 100. While Dav Watmore, the national coach, was watching that game. And I managed to hit a 6 into the dressing room window when Dav's back was turned. And as the ball crashed into the window, he had turned around and said, oh, who's actually batting? And that really was the first time he probably saw me bat. So a lot of things worked in my favor. But what I realized was that, okay, the only thing you can really bank on is what you have in terms not of talent, but of your work ethic and how you plan your training so you become a better player or the best player that you can be. And then the most difficult thing beyond that is to be able to deal with your strengths and weaknesses, both as a person and as a cricketer. A lot of the time we are asked to focus only on positive things, Harsha, positive reinforcement day in, day out. And that makes you at times become afraid of your weaknesses and very insecure about your weaknesses. And I think that acceptance that you're human, that you make mistakes, that you have certain aspects that are negative and certain aspects that are positive. Once you come to that acceptance, then you understand how to grow as a person and how to plan and grow as a cricketer. And I think that is a very, very important realization, epiphany that people need to come to. Once you come to that, you will always see cricketers improve drastically. They improve at a tremendous rate. Some cricketers like the Sachins of this world, come to that understanding very early on. Others like me, we take a lot of time. But whichever way you play your cricket and whichever way you are made emotionally, physically, mentally, you need to come to that stage. And once you do, you will really be liberated to really improve your cricket game. So whether you're young or you're old, I think those are the basics that you need to start from.
Yeah. You talked about talent and the shots that you played. You played a mean cover drive yourself. So we've got images for you of people playing cover drives. There's a bit of a googly there, but can you look at those images and
Can I tell you, one of my favorite cover drives is from Smriti Mandana.
Oh, okay. You got one straight away. Okay.
Oh, really?
Oh, she plays a mean cover drive, yeah.
It's amazing to watch. I watched her play a T20 match once live when I was commentating, and it's just absolutely fabulous to watch her bat.
Okay,
it's like, I don't know, first one is looks a bit like Gautam Gambhir.
Okay, go on. I won't say it's right or wrong.
Dilshan maybe on this next one.
I think you should definitely recognize one of them.
Or am I wrong in all of them?
You see yourself somewhere?
Is it me? I have no idea. Maybe if number 4, I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay, we put them out on the program. I won't keep you on very long. I won't keep you on much longer. Kumar, thank you very much, because it's wonderful talking to someone who's such a giant in the game, but who's not just a proud Sri Lankan, but a proud cricketer who belongs to the community of the game, not just to the community within a country. So I'll end with the same 5 words. Cricketing great, proud Sri Lankan, but I think you belong to the world as well, and may it long be that way.
Thank you, Harsha. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Kumar.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Thanks.